I'm sorry, my friends. So I was sharing the wrong screen actually. So again, a very good evening, my friends and professional colleagues. So this is a happy evening to be with you. I thank Navanotis people for giving me an opportunity to be speaker of this evening uh, about insulins. So we'll straight away get into the topic. And before that, I request all my participants and fellow colleagues to type any questions or queries in the chat box so that we'll take up at the end. The question and answer session will be taken at the end of the session after completing the two sessions. So with that, I just begin my topic. Uh, Today's topic being the timely insulin initiation. Why is it important? So this is my financial disclosure. And today's agenda is the burden of diabetes in India. We all know that it's a huge burden of diabetes in India. And taking cues from pathophysiology of type 2 diabetes and rationale for timely insulin initiation. We have divided our talk into three parts. And let's come to the part one, that is burden of diabetes in India. As all are well aware that 1 out of 12 adults in India has diabetes. In fact, it is almost 1 out of 8, and it's going to be soon 1 out of 5. And as of now, according to the Atlas of the 9th edition of Atlas of International Diabetes Federation 2019, India has got a load of 77 million adults with diabetes. That is as per the census of 2019 according to the International Diabetes Federation. And this is expected to be like the exponential growth will be like by 2045 the projected the rate is the 134.2 million, almost doubling of the number of the diabetes patients suffering in India. That's it. So from 2019 to 2045 there is almost 74.28% of increase in the incidence of the diabetes in India, and 4.39 crore people with type 2 diabetes do not know that they have it. This is not only seen in our India, even in the advanced countries also. Half of the patients, they don't know that they are suffering from diabetes or hypertension or dyslipidemia. These are the three major culprits which may complicate to either the microvascular or the macrovascular complications. But unfortunately, in our country, more than half of the people suffering from diabetes, they don't know that they have diabetes, and 8 in 10 people with diabetes do not achieve the desired treatment outcomes, and 10 lakhs 10,000 deaths are caused by India, caused by diabetes annually in our country. So this is a point to be noted. So miserable deaths like more than 10 lakhs 10,000, that is 1.01 million deaths are caused by diabetes annually in India. And the South Asian population, they are more prone to type 2 diabetes. The reasons being the evolutionary determined, that is on the response to lifestyle, both they lead to like this leads to the evolutionary determined leads to poor beta cell function, which leads to impaired insulin secretion, which in turn leads to increased type 2 diabetes susceptibility. And again on the other hand, a low lean muscle, that leads to impaired insulin action, that leads to increased incidence of type 2 diabetes susceptibility, which is the bidirectional in pathophysiology, that it leads to the ectopic fat deposition in the liver and muscle, and vice versa, the ectopic fat deposition in the liver and muscle also leads to the impaired insulin action and impaired insulin secretion, that is the insulin secretory problems, along with the impaired insulin action, that is insulin resistance. Both of them, the insulinopenia on the other one hand and the other hand the insulin resistance, they lead to increased susceptibility to type 2 diabetes. And the current glycemic status in India according to the India Diabetes Care Index that is initiated by Novo Nordisk only. As per the India Diabetes Care Index May 2020, the average HbA1c in our country is 8.51 and the average the fasting plasma glucose is 172 milligram per deciliter and average postprandial glucose is 253.3 milligram per deciliter, which is terribly bad. So it is almost the HbA1c is almost 1.5 percent away from the normal, that is from 7 it is 8.5 and the fasting is also too high, that is it should be less than 130, it is 172, whereas the postprandial glucose it should be less than 180, it is more than 74 points extra. And the second is they taking cues from the pathophysiology of type 2 diabetes. And the development of type 2 diabetes is progressive. Actually, type 2 diabetes is always a progressive disorder. And the normal regulation of the glucose metabolism is determined by a feedback loop involving the islet beta cell and insulin sensitive tissues. And you can see in this the cartoon, the insulin resistance on one hand and the progressive beta failure on the other hand, and insulin resistance that leads to the beta cells increase insulin output to maintain normal glucose tolerance, and the decline in insulin secretion, that is called progressive beta cell failure, and which perpetuates the one another, that is it's a vicious cycle. The decline in insulin secretion and the progressive beta cell failure will lead to insulin resistance, as well as the insulin resistance will lead to again progressive beta cell failure and decline in the insulin secretion, which actually put together they lead to postprandial plasma glucose levels. They start to rise. The first one to rise is the postprandial plasma glucose levels. They just begin to rise, and later on what happens, the fasting plasma glucose levels they start rising, and put together they cause the over diabetes. A stage before that is called pre-diabetes, that is either the impaired the glucose tolerance IGT, or that leads to later on the impaired fasting glucose IFG, which both together are termed the pre-diabetes, and after that the stage is over diabetes, and the progressive beta cell failure determines the rate of disease progression. And the type 2 diabetes mellitus is a progressive disease with the beta cell function decreases over time. And by the time the diabetes is diagnosed, the patients could have lost at least 50% of their beta cell function. This is postulated by Ralph A. DiFranco. And now the latest hypothesis is that by the time the patient is diagnosed, almost 80% of the beta cell function is lost. So now you can see this the graph actually. The y-axis is that represents the beta cell function, and the x-axis it shows the duration in years. Like this is the arrow which shows the diagnosis of diabetes. So prior to that, 2 years prior to that, the postprandial blood glucose levels they start rising, and that is a stage called later on around 8 years ago, 8 years previous to that, prior to that, the stage called, that's what I told, the impaired glucose tolerance IGT, and IFG and IGT all the time they result in over diabetes. The pre-diabetes leads to over diabetes, and you can see on the right hand side, after the diagnosis and after 8 years, almost the insulin is the insulin naive patient becomes the insulin patient, the patient who is on insulin, that is insulin initiation will be there, and in between 8 to 14 years there will be insulin intensification. That is, see, there is insulin initiation, there is insulin titration or optimization, and the third one is the insulin intensification. you can see that the gray one represents the OADs, and the orange color initiates that indicates the insulin initiation and the titration, and the dark brick red that shows insulin intensification. And natural history of type 2 diabetes progression, and you can see the same thing from 0 years, prior to that 5 years, and prior to that 10 years. So all the time you have to keep in mind that the diabetes is diagnosed today. It doesn't mean that the diagnosis is the diabetes started just today only. It's somewhere around 5 to 10 years ago the disease process started with the pathophysiology of insulin resistance and insulin secretory defects, that is either the insulinopenia or the insulin resistance, 5 to 10 years prior to the diagnosis of diabetes. And after 5 years, and after 10 years, after the 15 years, so slowly the declining islet beta cell function while insulin intensively is unchanged, and you find the microvascular complications, and much prior to that, even in the phase of IGT, the macrovascular complications, they start to occur. And so that is the reason why we should be very vigilant with regards to the pre-diabetes. See, we should pick up the patients at the level of the pre-diabetes itself, because the incidence of the macrovascular disease is same in pre-diabetes and diabetes. That is especially the coronary artery disease, that is CAD, the myocardial infarction, is the incidence is same in pre-diabetes and diabetes. So you have to take care of the patients in pre-diabetic stage, so that you can prevent the atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. And if you catch up the patient in over diabetes, there is no much use rather than preventing the microvascular complications. So this is important, that if at all you have to stop the macrovascular complications, you should try to catch the patient up in the stage of pre-diabetes itself, not in the diabetes stage. So the insulin physiology, the secretory defects in the type 2 diabetes. On the left hand side it is the normal, and the right hand side you can see this type 2 diabetes. See, they typically the changes are there are two phases of insulin secretion. First phase is called the acute secretion, or the second phase is called the delayed secretion. That is, first phase of insulin response or second phase of insulin response, what we call the acute secretion of insulin and the delayed secretion of insulin. And it is quite normal, like it is very much normal. You can see in the left hand side, you can see the very prompt the first phase of insulin response, so that the blood sugars, they go down, and euglycemic rhythm is very much maintained, as the second phase is also been very active. So whereas you come to type 2 diabetes, you find the loss of first phase of insulin response, that is the acute secretion. The first phase is lost, so that there will be an acute hyperglycemia soon after you take some food. And later on what happens is, even the blunting of the second phase of the insulin secretion we notice, so that we find the hyperglycemia, and insulin secretory defects in type 2 diabetes can be mitigated with exogenous insulin therapy. That's what is not there in the body, that is when the endogenous insulin runs short badly, we need to go for the exogenous insulin therapy. That is the importance of insulin therapy. And coming to the last part of the talk, the rationale for timely insulin initiation. And insulin initiation is often delayed in type 2 diabetes despite the high HbA1c. That is what we see in our Indian scenario. See, there are multiple causes for that. The clinician's inertia is one, and the clinical inertia is second, and the therapeutic inertia is the third, and last but not the least, the patient inertia. The patient is also at fault, but before finding fault with the patients, we need to find fault with ourselves for not initiating the timely initiation of insulin at the proper time, that is what is called the early initiation of insulin. That is nothing but the insulin initiation at the need of the hour. That is, so it is seen from multiple studies like Initiative, Euromix, and Improve, and Initiate Plus, and this 1707. So they all show that the HbA1c is 9.7% in Initiate, and Euromix it is 9.2, and Improve it is 9.3, and Initiate Plus it is 9.9, and the last is 9.5. Though the HbA1c is so much high, and you can see the duration of the diabetes here, like the years, like this is the y-axis being the HbA1c, and it is from 7.4 it starts, and it goes to the 10 point. The study was for 10.3 years, and this was for 9.5 years, and this was for 7.7 years. In spite of that, the patients are they're running a very bad HbA1c control. So that that means what is the inference from this slide is the initiation of insulin is often delayed either by the doctor concerned, the clinician concerned, or sometimes it so happens that even the clinician the initiates and the patient resists at all, totally resists insulin, and that's a different scenario. So we need to properly initiate the insulin at the need of hour actually, to prevent the complications and to get back to the HbA1c to the normalcy. And HbA1c of more than 7 is linked to increasing in the complications. You can see that the top one is the orange is retinopathy, and the navy blue is nephropathy, that is diabetic kidney disease, and the blue green one is neuropathy, and the blue is light blue is microalbuminuria, and there is little bit of change in the terms by this the 2021 guidelines of American Diabetes Association. Standards of the medical care in diabetes has changed the microalbuminuria to the increased UACR, that is urinary albumin creatinine ratio. There is no term called microalbuminuria as per ADA 2021. And way back in 2016, the nephropathy was replaced with a coin by a term called the diabetic kidney disease. You can see the A1C, as the A1C goes up from 6 to 12, you find at the A1C of 12, you find the much raised incidence of retinopathy or the nephropathy or the neuropathy or the microalbuminuria. This indicates the classical microvascular complications, what earlier we used to call the triopathy, the retinopathy and the nephropathy and the neuropathy, and all of them start to they tend to rise from until 7 of HbA1c it is okay. After that you can see they take an upward curve, so that the complications they do happen, they do occur in the patients who are not controlled to the target, whose HbA1c is not around or below 7. So the take home message is HbA1c level is associated with the microvascular long-term diabetes complications, especially all microvascular and macrovascular complications also. Unlike insulin, addition of subsequent OADs doesn't offer the benefit. You can see in this left hand side, the addition of 2 OADs has reduced only the A1C by 1%. Addition of 3 OADs, it's only 0.5%. That is, the patient is going to a stage of beta cell exhaustion. The beta cells are dying off. And 4 OADs, you can see only the maximum gain is only the 0.2% of the A1C. And on insulin, you can see the reduction is 1.3% of HbA1c. And the dark blue, navy blue is pre-treatment, and the grey is post-treatment actually. So use of multiple OADs driven by the convenience, acceptance by patients, and limited consultation time. And the successive OADs provide lessening effect, substantial before the substantial benefit from initiating insulin. So we are supposed to meticulously control the HbA1c to the target of less than 7 or around 7 to control the complications of microvascular in and the macrovascular too. Insulin offers the maximum HbA1c benefits, the reductions you can see starting from the GLP-1 receptor agonists and the DPP-4 inhibitors and the alpha glucosidase inhibitors and the thiazolidinediones and the sulfonylureas and the glinides and the metformin and the basal insulin and the biphasic premix and the prandial insulin and basal bolus insulin and SGLT2 inhibitors. You can see the maximum of the HbA1c reduction is seen with the biphasic premixed. Either it may be a human biphasic premixed or the analog biphasic premixed. The same is been in the bar diagram on the right hand side. You can see the 2 OADs and 3 OADs and 4 OADs, and we have seen in the earlier slide also. And this is what is called the type 2 diabetes as beta cell function declines. Addition of more than 3 OADs, they don't work at all. So our either third option or fourth option should be inevitably insulin in day-to-day clinical practice. See, that is after metformin, after sulfonylurea, either you should go for insulin or at least after alpha glucosidase inhibitor or the DPP-4 inhibitor or the SGLT2 inhibitor or the thiazolidinedione, that is pioglitazone. The fourth option is inevitably the nothing other than insulin is the choice of drug. And what do the standard guidelines recommend about timing of insulin and initiation in type 2 diabetes management? When we come to this, the RSSDI and ESI, that is the Research Society for the Study of Diabetes in India and the Endocrine Society of India clinical practice recommendations for the management of type 2 diabetes mellitus, what they say is insulin therapy should be considered in all patients failing to achieve glycemic targets on 3 oral agents. And if possible, the patient is not controlled on the maximal dose of 2 oral agents, that is the metformin and the glimepiride also. You can make a trial and you can counsel the patient that if the third agent is not going to be beneficial, you have to be on insulin. You just have to put a word to the patient so that he will be psychologically prepared for insulin, and the provider should avoid using insulin as a threat. Always I tell everybody that insulin is not a threat. Like, you have to counsel the patient the importance of insulin, and then only with the acceptance. And what I say is treatment is nothing but defined as it's a gentleman's agreement between the patient and the doctor. That is called treatment. So you don't use this insulin as a threat to the patient or describing it as a sign of personal failure or punishment, and should work to alleviate patient's anxiety about hypoglycemia and dependence and injection site pain and all, which are commonly attributed to insulin. So, considering the Indian reality of high carbohydrate diet and high postprandial glucose excursions, the premixed or the insulin co-formulations may be the right choice for Indian insulin initiation in most of the cases, and prescription of premixed insulin, that is more than 69% in Indian patients, is predominant. To tell you very honestly, the desired insulins in my practice are confined to only around some 20%, and all other 80% of my patients are on this biphasic premixed human insulins. And the American Diabetes Association criteria for initiating insulin therapy in type 2 diabetes patients, it says insulin therapy can be initiated in patients with newly diagnosed type 2 diabetes who are symptomatic and have A1C of around or more than 10%, and our blood glucose level around or more than 300 milligram per deciliter. But this recommendation level is E. Recommendation levels are that is the level of recommendation is from the A, B, C, D and E. E is the experience and the expert opinion. And coming to the recommendation level B, what it says is patients with type 2 diabetes not achieving glycemic goals must be put on insulin. That's what the ADA says. So any body, any international authority, or the Indian RSSDI, or the Endocrine Society of India, what all they suggest is that is the early initiation is much better than the delayed initiation, which will not help the patient in any way. So early initiation is nothing but early initiation of insulin is nothing but you need to initiate the insulin at the proper time, at the right time, at the need of the hour. That's what the essence is. And why is timely initiation particularly important in Indians? So we take this Pima Indians and the Asian Indians. The Pima Indians are seen in the aboriginal areas of the American continent, the Central America, that is the USA, or the North America. The Pima Indians are seen. You find this the blue one is the Pima Indian, and the Asian Indian is orange, and you find the normal and the impaired fasting glucose and impaired glucose tolerance, IFG plus IGT, and over diabetes. This is the glycemic status. Why we are very particular about this Pima Indians? Pima Indian type 2 diabetes is very typically different from other Indians, other Asian Indians, and other patients suffering from diabetes. Usually the Pima Indians are very obese, and they have got lot of the insulin resistance, and they have lot of the blood sugars, like the much of hyperglycemia is seen with the Pima Indians, and they need a lot of insulin dose also when compared to the other types of diabetes. The Pima Indian type 2 diabetes, it is specially known as. And even with normoglycemia, Asian Indians had lower meal fasting insulin secretion as compared to the Pima Indians. That's what I said. And following a 75 gram OGTT, Asian Indians exhibited a significantly lower 30-minute insulin levels. And heterogeneous pathways of type 2 diabetes is mainly the early natural history of diabetes, emphasis of insulin resistance in Pima Indians, and the early Asian Indians had 3 times less insulin secretion. So timely initiation of insulin is logical, and that overcomes the glucotoxicity, and importantly that even takes care of the glucose variability also, not only the glucose toxicity. The glucotoxicity and the glucose variability are much taken care by the selection of insulin actually, and that's going to benefit the beta cells in the form of rest actually. When you are giving the exogenous insulin, the endogenous insulin will not be secreted, so that is almost giving rest to the pancreas, that is giving rest to the beta cell, that is what is called. And more than 50% of the participants remained in remission at the end of 1 year with insulin. This is what you see with this. The first bar is the continuous subcutaneous insulin infusion in the remission group, and the second light blue is the multiple doses of insulin in the remission group, and the third is the navy blue, dark blue is the OHA in the remission group, and the grey is non-remission group. So the inference is more than 50% of the participants remained in remission at the end of 1 year with insulin. And the pleiotropic benefits of insulin. See, these are all the mechanisms of insulin benefits, like it's anti-inflammatory in action, it is antioxidant, and it is anti-thrombotic, and it is glucose lowering agent, it is cardioprotective, it is neuroprotective, it is anti-apoptotic. Apoptosis is nothing but programmed cell death is called apoptosis. So apoptosis is being prevented by this particular insulin. So vasodilation and platelet inhibition is also like one of the benefits of this particular insulin, and the beta cell rest and improvement in the function is also the benefits of the insulin. So it acts on the heart, it acts on the brain, it acts on the red blood cells, and it acts on the vascular system, it acts on every system of the body, and thereby it reduces the incidence of microvascular as well as the macrovascular complications of diabetes. And timely insulin, that is, the positively alters the course of disease progression. You can see the dark blue is that is the conventional therapy, and the dotted light blue is intensive therapy. You can see the intensive treatment with insulin. You can definitely see the decline in the blood glucose when compared to the conventional therapy, and then you can see the A1C, the decrease in the A1C also. Similarly with the intensive group when compared to the conventional treatment group. And good glycemic control all the time matters. And 20 to 30 year follow up of results of Wikipedia's the landmark United Kingdom prospective diabetes original results, the intensive versus the conventional control. That is, the study started in 1977, it's still going on, but after 10 years it was evaluated, after 20 years it was evaluated, and after 30 years also it was evaluated. So you can see this the 12% reduction in the any diabetes related endpoint you can find with this the inference of Wikipedia's, and the 25% reduction in the microvascular disease, and 16% reduction in the myocardial infarction. That is after the 20 years of evaluation, and after 30 years it is seen that the any diabetes related endpoint was reduced by 9%, and the microvascular disease was reduced by 24%, more or less 20 years or 30 years, that makes no difference as well as this particular microvascular disease is concerned. And the myocardial infarction 16% in the 20 years, and as 15% after 30 years, makes no much difference. So these are all the benefits seen with this particular the maintenance of the HbA1c, and getting back to HbA1c to the normalcy results in so many benefits. And better HbA1c control is associated with reduction in long-term health complications. Every 1% of drop in HbA1c can reduce long-term diabetes complications. You can see there's 43% of the lower extremity amputation or the fatal peripheral vascular disease, or fatal the peripheral arterial disease, PAD bar PVD, that is reduced by 43%, and lower limb extremity amputations LLEA is reduced by 43%, and 37% risk reduction in microvascular disease, and 19% risk reduction in cataract extraction, and 16% benefit with the reduction of heart failure, and 14% reduction with the myocardial infarction, and again 12% reduction with the stroke. And Wikipedia's prospective observational study in 23 hospital-based clinics in England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, and the subject was number was 4,585 patients, and 3,642 were included in the analysis of a relative risk. And to summarize, this is the take-home message. And type 2 diabetes mellitus is characterized by early progressive insulin deficiency, and no oral therapy alters the decline in the beta cell function. Poor glycemic control is an important driver for diabetes complications, and early intensification is the key, may provide long-term health benefits for type 2 diabetes patients. And thank you very much for your patient listening. Thank you.